Hello, everyone. Welcome back to What a Comedian. This is Natalie the host and have been host, creator. I don't know what else to say. I hope everyone's doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty well myself. It's really just getting through it at this point for school. I have spring break in Uno Day, so that's great. Honestly, nothing has occurred much. Got into a few colleges here and there, just waiting on a few more. I actually got rejected by a college today, which was really fun. Not that I cared too much. It was just a little, eh. What else? I think that I have been slacking in my comedy recently, and I'm trying to ramp that up again. I've recently watched 2 Bill Burr specials, and Nate Bargatze. That's who it was. Sorry. Excuse me. And they're pretty funny, I'm not gonna lie. I think I watched Bill Burr's Red Rock, the same one I watched this time too, a while ago, but I didn't really like the style back then. But now that I rewatched it, I actually really enjoy how he kind of shows his own opinion and doesn't do too much crowd pleasing, people pleasing. Like he's very himself, and he gives out valid opinions because honestly, there's many things in politics, whatever, that is very absurd, oxymoronic, contradictory, and he points them out a lot, which is very insightful to not only as like a comedy joke, but also just as life in general, and just realizing that the polarization and American politics and just other things in general is very absurd in a way, and there's a median that can be made, or a bridge that can be made in between the two sides. What else? I realized how much I am so bad at talking and socializing recently by listening to these older clips. I'm so shocked by what I say when I don't think about it too much. And it's not like I don't try to be better at talking, it's just, I don't know. But I'm trying to become better, trying to have less repetition of words in my sentences, and saying less ums and being comfortable in the silence. Today, there's an interview with Lucas O'Neill. He is currently a comedian residing in New York, but has previously had history in Chicago. He recently filmed his special Emotional Man, which I don't think is out yet, but it should be out. I don't know, but I'm really excited to see it when it does come out. He's overall a very down-to-earth, funny guy, and I realized how much he had to handle by talking to me. But he is a sweet, wonderful man. I hope to meet him in person. I hope to talk to him again. And yeah, let's just head on right to the talk.
How'd you get into comedy? And what are you getting to do in it besides this podcast?
So I basically, in the beginning, I didn't get that into comedy. I watched just like a few stand-up people, such as like John Mulaney, Ricky Gervais, Jimmy Carr. It's a very weird variety.
Car. Okay.
Yeah. And I just watched those things religiously, and I would just like love watching their specials. And then I never really went further than that until last year. My English teacher was like, "Oh yeah, I love John Mulaney too," and I'm like, "Oh wait, people
Mm.
like this stuff too." So,
Yeah.
so then we started talking a lot about it, and then he would give me a bunch of like new suggestions, be like, "Watch this person, watch that person, go to this show, do this, do that," and I'm like, so I just started really getting into it, and he's like, "You should like try something, like try an open mic," and I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay, I will." So I signed up for like the one nearby, and I got rejected. Like I got signed up and I got on the list, and I went there in person, and they're like, "You're not old enough." I was like, "Oh, okay." So I also tried stand up in his classroom. So and I found
Hmm.
it very fun.
Yeah.
So now here I am with the podcast.
The true, the true 2024 comedian's journey. I liked doing stand up, so now I have a podcast. Um, that's great. I think Taylor Tomlinson, I think she started when she was like 16 or
Yeah.
something like that.
I also loved
Um,
watching Taylor Tomlinson when I started out too. I've been dropping though. I've been lacking in specials, but that's okay.
yeah, definitely, it's okay. I barely watch any. Um, yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, when I first started kind of falling in love with comedy when I was like probably 13 or 14. My dad bought me like a little it was like an XM radio or whatever.
Hmm.
And so I would fall asleep listening to like like the comedy channels.
Yeah.
And so I found like yeah, now you're falling asleep, so you're not really like seeing who it is, but you're like listening to the cadence. And eventually I like learned, and it was like, people who I doubt you've heard of. Because most people my age are just like, unless they're real comedy nerds, they don't know a ton of like Brian Regan bits from 1998. But I remember just always liking it, but never thinking of myself as like the funny kid. And like my best friends were always like the funny kid. And my best friend in high school like did stand up at like a high school like coffee shop open mic kind of thing.
Wow.
And I remember just like wanting to like talk with him about like, well, how are you deciding the bits? And I would like sit with him and be like, you should do it. And I was like just encouraging him to do it, even though he kind of didn't want to do it. But it was like that. I wanted to be as close as I could to it,
Yeah.
not realizing that like years later I would realize like, oh, it's because I wanted to do it. And I didn't know how. So I think and I only did it because I got cut from the college basketball team and I kind of needed to figure something else out.
You can't
And
do athletics, just do comedy.
that's kind of yeah. I mean, you need yeah, that's what happened. I took an improv class like because I needed to do my theater. I had to get my like theater and
Hmm.
performing arts requirement done. And I took the class and we had to go see the college improv group perform as part of the class. And I like watched and I was like, yeah, it was fun to do. Fun to watch, but it'd be like way more fun to do.
Yeah.
And the next fall I auditioned and I got in and kind of changed the whole trajectory. I studied English and theater and kind of
What major were
that's
you
how
planning
that
to
started.
go into first?
Oh God, I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, like maybe psychology. I
Psychology?
don't maybe. I mean, I at that point, yeah, I didn't know why I was in college at that point. Like I had gone to play back, like in my mind, I had gone and I was just gonna like keep doing what I was doing, which is like, yeah, learn in school, but like play basketball.
Yeah.
And so once I lost that, I really was like, why am I in college? What's the point of this? It wasn't until I found theater and stuff and performance that I came back. I was like, okay, it's cool to be here.
Yeah, I like this a little bit.
Yeah. But I didn't, I really, and I don't think a lot of my friends, some of my friends knew why they were in college, but a lot of us were like, because that's the thing you do next.
Yeah.
So,
It's like the planned trajectory of your next like the next step of your life no matter what you do.
yeah.
Yeah.
And if you don't, that's great. I mean, but it's more, it's just in a certain, yeah. I mean, I have friends who obviously didn't go to college and they just started working. But that's like, no one was like expecting me to do that in
Yeah.
my family. They were like, "You're gonna go to college for sure." And I was like, "All right,
All right, you're paying for it.
yeah, it sounds good." I mean, yep, all right.
So why did you decide to go to like Chicago after it?
Mm. Um, because so I had talked to a comedian who actually went to Bowdoin many years before me, Hari Kondabolu, and when he would come back and perform at school, I would just like annoy him with questions.
Mm-hmm.
And the he had gone to Seattle when he first started, and so his recommendation was like go to a secondary city before you go to New York and LA, so that you can like basically get good. You can get a bunch of stage time, you can fail, you can get better, and then when you go to one of these, industry cities, you like are something already, because there's so much competition in the coast. And so I looked at a bunch of different cities. I kind of like toyed around with like maybe DC, maybe Seattle, maybe San Francisco. And then I just like got to Chicago and I was like, oh, this place. And it was perfect, because it's a legitimate comedy scene. It has a
Yeah.
real history of having great comedians from there. Um, the people who live there take pride in going and seeing young comedians
Mm-hmm.
and like discovering the next crop of talent. And um, and you can just do a lot. You can do improv and stand up,
Mm-hmm.
and there is industry there, so you can get seen. I mean, yeah, it was an amazing place. And for me, I remember when I first moved there, feeling like so gratified that I was surrounded with other people who were as serious about comedy as I was. Because like when I first started, I was living at home in Portland, Maine, and I was like doing stuff, local stuff, driving to Boston, and it was just you're not surrounded by people who are trying to like make it their career. You're like with hobbyists or, people who like already have families and jobs. And you're like, I'm 23, like I kind of only want to care about this.
Yeah.
So getting to Chicago felt really good because I was like, oh, other people who are also like just caring about this too much are here. And how
Yeah.
nice.
No, yeah, I definitely relate to that because I sometimes, since like I'm close to Chicago, I would sometimes go down to Chicago and like actually with like my like slight interest in comedy, I was like, oh wait, Stephen Colbert, Steve
Mhm.
Carell, all like went through Chicago. Like I want to see where they came from and like Second City and all that thing. So I like went to a Second City show with my mom. She didn't like the show that much, but I liked it a lot.
Mhm.
So I was like, wow, this is like live comedy is like the thing. Like I
Yeah.
love that. It's so much
Yeah.
better than watching on like something on TV.
Yeah, I did IO and I did some annoyance stuff. I didn't go all the way through at either of those places because like you kind of even though both improv and stand up are there, you kind of have to pick a lane, it
Hmm.
felt like. And so I picked stand up. Um, but you're always getting to interweave with the improv community and stuff. So I just did a lot of open mics and, the clubs and I would go around and perform in Michigan and like Minnesota. And I mean, the great thing about Chicago as a place for a comic is like you have a city and then you can very easily get to like more suburban or rural areas. And so your act, I think, gets really polished for a broad audience while staying like specific. Because you can get, if you're in like New York or you're in Los Angeles, your comedy can be very, very city specific.
Hmm.
Like it can just be very urban, very like, I very much designed for like someone who's in their 20s to 30s who lives in a city and orders Uber Eats all the time. And I think like there's value in that, but there's a ton of value in testing your bits in a city like Chicago and then going to like a one nighter in a town of 1,500 people in Michigan and being like, okay, is it working here too? Great. That's a really good sign.
Did you really like trying to like expand your demographic with your jokes, or like did you find that like most of your like punchlines really hit with like a certain age group or a certain demographic or something?
Mm. I mean, I think that I think that you like I got better one. So I was better able to craft a joke so that it would work
Yeah.
with more people and more places. Um, and I think mm, it wasn't like an intentional thing of like, oh, I need a broader demographic. I genuinely just think like I got funnier, and also there sometimes when you are young, um, people who are like 15 or 20 years older than you, like, don't want to hear your take on certain things, like certain ideas. They're like, you don't have the gravitas
Yeah.
in their mind. And so I do think just like getting older kind of me, helped me become trustworthy in the eyes of older audience members, even if I didn't really like change what I was talking about,
Yeah.
how people see me in relation to what I'm talking about changed.
Yeah.
And so that helped.
So it's kind of like it's like that's why like older white men succeed in comedy more because they have like that pass to like
Hmm.
rant about certain things.
Yeah, and I mean, also like people are used to that type of, they like can see that person succeeding, right?
Yeah.
Like an industry will be like, yeah, oh no, he has it. And it's like, well, why do you think he has it? And it's like, well, because this history of all these other like straight white guys who have succeeded before.
History repeats itself.
Yeah, exactly. And we're just like, I don't know, just like he looks like someone who would do this well. And you're like, all right. Um, way to investigate that bias. But yeah, and I do think there's also like an element of like you don't, yeah, I mean, a straight white guy as I am, like I don't have to explain to an audience like why they should listen to me. Like I don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
You know, there's this kind of like culturally, they're just like, yeah, okay, well, we'll listen to him. We'll
Hmm.
like treat his ideas as probably valid first.
Yeah.
And I do think that like, you know, other comics who are not of that demographic, they sometimes have to like fight against this like invisible barrier of like validating themselves in the eyes of the audience, and it can
Hmm.
be like a challenge. Um, and it's kind of why like I don't know. I when I was doing comedy, there was a, I'm sure this is still true, but there was like a lot of like older white guys who were like frustrated about how they couldn't get spots because they were like, they don't let enough white guys on shows. And it's like,
They do.
they do. There's still like four of the six comics.
Yeah.
Okay. There's spots for you. It's just, you know, it's not harder for you.
Yeah.
You still have a blank, like everyone's fine. You get up there and we go, yeah, it's up to you whether it goes well or not.
Hmm.
Anyway.
So I when I was interviewing other comedians, they often would say they wanted to pick which open mics they would go to because of like certain
Hmm.
audiences or how the way
Hmm.
other comedians treated them in that
Yeah.
environment. Did you also
Yes.
have a similar experience in trying to like pick and choose where you wanted to go?
Definitely. Yeah, you got to find your tribe. As like I think that's an Amy Poehler phrase. But yeah, you got to go to the rooms that like feel like your style of comedy has a chance of succeeding and that you can get honest feedback. Because for me, there was just like a lot of rooms where it's like kind of like just like dudes who just want to do dude comedy, and it's like broy, and like that never worked for me. I never got feedback on that I felt like was true, because then I'd go to other rooms with different makeups of people and it would work. And so you just go, oh, okay, what I'm doing doesn't work here. So let's go to these places where I can like know, oh, this joke worked. It's because it works. And not because these guys, for whatever reason, don't want to laugh at me.
Yeah. Did you find like differences in performing to smaller audiences compared to larger audiences when you were doing these things?
For sure. I mean, there's like a number of people you kind of need in an audience for
Yeah.
them to feel like they can laugh.
Yeah.
Um, that said, uh, I went to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in 2023,
Hmm.
and that's in Edinburgh, Scotland, and it's like, you know, this big international festival, and there's so many performers, and you really get a ton of practice performing your hour-long show for like four people. And like you can get them to laugh. You do figure out like you can do it, but it's a lot easier if it's a lot of people. Um, I I have also gotten open for a comedian and with a big online presence, and so he'll tour and he'll like sell like 1,500 tickets or like 2,000 tickets. Like our
Yeah.
show will be in a big, and that is so much easier. I mean, like getting because like if you get a third of the crowd out of 1,500, that's 500 people
It's
laughing.
still a
That's
lot of
like
people.
good. Yeah. But if you're in like a 10-person room and it's a third, you're like, that's three people laughed and like one person smiled a little. It's like not good. It
Yeah.
feels bad.
I mean, like,
So there is, yeah,
yeah.
there's an ease, I think, with a certain crowd size.
No,
Like you can
yeah.
still bomb, but
You can still bomb.
yeah, yeah.
Is
I
it
mean, you can definitely still not get laughed.
is it harder on you when you're thinking, oh wait, 1,500 people did not laugh at this joke, compared to 10 people
Yeah,
didn't laugh?
yeah. And I think it's also because like the highs of that of 1,500 people is so hot. Like when everyone's laughing,
Mm-hmm.
it's so clear and strong.
Yeah.
So then when the absence of that is like really stark.
The silence
Um,
is loud.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, yeah, I definitely have like experience with larger crowds because even though I've never done like stand up per se, I've performed like one singular show at our high school, and it was always like a huge thing. It was like an annual tradition, and it's like sold out. So we did like a kind of like a self-written like comedy skit in the beginning.
Cool.
It definitely, when people laughed, it felt like really good. But when people
Hmm.
didn't, it was like, oh, that wasn't that funny, I guess.
Yeah, and like that's the thing about stand up, right? And like you have to practice it in front of people. That's like the only way
Yeah,
that you know if it works or not.
yeah. I mean, do you have like when you're writing these jokes, do you have a sense of like, oh, this might be funny, or it's like, oh, you're just gonna try everything you have in front of a crowd and see what catches bait?
I think that as much as I have honed my little gauge for what's probably going to work,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I am way better at that
Yeah,
at identifying. Yeah, you still don't always know. I mean, sometimes I'm like, that's good. And I just know it. I know it's a joke. I know it's going to work. And it comes out fully formed. But there is a lot of times where you just are like, you have to say the idea in front of people, and then they laugh in a way that you go, oh, okay. This little idea, this little observation I had has more room to grow in a way that I would have never known just in my own head because I didn't know how many other people have like thought about it or haven't thought about it but are now immediately intrigued by it or whatever. Like that there's like a novelty and relevancy to the idea that only a crowdsourcing can kind of allow me to tap into. But yeah. So I think there's like an acknowledgement of like I'm better at knowing what will work and sometimes you just something will work and you go, I would have never, yeah, okay, great. I guess this is a bit. I didn't know.
yeah. How often do you add like new bits into your shows, and like do you do improv much in your shows?
Mm. I think I'm getting better at trying new things sooner. I think I'm pretty meticulous in trying to like fine tune things and making sure it works. Um, but like right now, I've got a kind of hour-long show that I've done a bunch and I'm trying to like finalize and like film.
Yeah.
And so it depends on the show. So like if it's a big showcase or like it's a paid gig and I'm like I'll do a little probably do a little bit of like newer stuff, but you kind of have to mix that in a way that like you still do very well overall.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like shows around town now, like around Brooklyn and stuff, I'll yeah, you'll do like maybe like 3 or 4 minutes that's like newer in a way that like when I was 3 years in, I would have never done because I only wanted people to see that I could do great, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's like once you get to a place where you're like, I got a track record here. I mean, like, so I can try new stuff and know that I'm not gonna like never get booked again, you know? Yeah, I mean it is a little bit about like trusting that I'm funny
Yeah,
and that that will work,
I see.
even if I don't know the material in the way that I like to know each part of a joke.
Do you try to do some crowd work when you do your acts?
I really like, yeah, I'd be interested. Yeah, I crowd work. So when I first started, crowd work was viewed as um, like like cheap jokes
Mm-hmm.
because um, it, what you're trying to do with a joke is like you try to get a premise, like tries to bring everyone in on the joke, right? It's like you're trying to, and then you laugh about it. It's like you want to get everyone in the present moment with this idea, all looking at the same in the same direction, and then go, oh, look over here, and we all laugh at that. You're trying to create immediacy in stand up through
Mm-hmm.
your premises. And it's like with crowd work, the immediacy is right there because it's happening in real time, right, with everybody. And so it's a little bit of a cheat code. And also you have a microphone and the audience member doesn't, and you always get the last word.
Yeah.
And so I also was like, no one, any booker wants to know like what your material is. They don't really want to know like of any booker of like a comedy club or like people who book like Just for Laughs festival or like other big stuff or like late night show bookers. It's like people aren't getting their late night sets on Seth Meyers doing crowd work. It's like it's their 5 minutes of jokes. So
Yeah.
to me, it felt like a misplacement of my efforts. That said, now that's how people have gained a following
Yeah.
is like doing crowd work, which makes a ton of sense because you can post crowd work and then keep your material for
Mm-hmm.
when people come to your shows and not burn through it and have people come and be like, I've seen 30 of your 45 minutes. Um, but it's just not, it hasn't been the most exciting part of stand up for me. I'd much rather try to figure out like, it's more exciting to see like, does this idea work? That's more exciting. Um, and then leaving space for play and discovery within your performance, but that's not reliant on like, what do you do for work?
Mm-hmm. No,
What's your take on crowd work? Do you
I
like it? Do you see a lot of it? Is that kind of,
I mean, I definitely have seen parts of it. Like
yeah,
on my like I'm on Instagram a lot, so
yeah,
I see like different people's crowd work, but I definitely do I much rather enjoy watching people's actual like honed out jokes per
right,
se because I feel like those are much more they're just much better than what you
yeah,
can make up on the spot.
yep,
Unless you're like super good at like
yes,
improv and all that things,
yep,
then like good for you. Like I like those like on the spot like just thinkings. But
yeah,
most people aren't the best at it. So it
yeah,
just seems like you're just instead of like making it funny, it just seems mean in a way.
yes, exactly. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And there's like, like Rory Scovel will do like an hour of made up stuff. And
Yeah.
it's like, totally. But he's Rory Scovel, and most people are not. Um, I think also like this is a throwback, but like Paula Poundstone's really funny. These people can do like they'll do a full show. I mean, David Tell could do like a whole crowd work
Mm-hmm.
thing. Todd Barry, who's a more obscure comic, but he did a whole like crowd work tour where he like did a whole thing. But these are great seasoned comedians who've been doing it for like 20 years, and it's or more. Um, but there is a thing where the easier jokes can still work with crowd work, and they don't work if it's a bit. Like you have like a bit has to really be sharp and original to cut,
Mm-hmm.
and crowd work doesn't have that high of a threshold to get through, which is I think what to your point of like why you might like the other stuff more. It's like because it's better, it's like
Yeah.
sharper, because it has to be.
Yeah, in a way, to me, it's definitely like is more. It's smarter in a way because I love comedy in a way because comedy always has like usually has good comedy at least has meaning behind jokes
Mhm.
and like an
Mhm.
overarching theme and things. But when it comes to crowd work, it kind of just like random things pop out and some
Yeah,
things laugh, some things don't, you know.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, totally.
Yeah. So on your tour, why did you name it Emotional Man?
Mm-hmm. Well, because I had a name for it, and then my PR person didn't like it,
Oh,
so then I had to come up with a new name, and I think it's a fitting name. It's Emotional Man because I am an emotional man, and there is a lot of material, and sort of the story of it is like my dad and I, as different generations, navigating like high emotional things and the ways in which we differ and deal with it and actually have commonalities and sort of a coming to age, like reckoning with me of the ways in which my dad is just another person, another emotional man like me, but it is how it manifests has been different. And I've been confused by that, but kind of finding more understanding there.
yeah.
I don't know. It just seemed funny a little bit just to be like emotional man. It's like, I don't know. It felt clear. It felt like if you had to define me, I was like, that is one of the ways you could find me.
If it's like they're like, pick three words to describe you, one of them would be emotional.
Yeah, I think that's true. And yeah, and maybe man. And a third thing.
Yeah. What was the name before you were gonna
I
choose
think
it?
it was called Timeless. I called it Timeless. And see, it does less. It doesn't feel as much. But I liked it because I had okay, the reason that I liked it was that I was doing like all of my jokes that had like endured.
Hmm.
Like that was basically like these are my best jokes of the last 8 years that
Yeah.
I've come up with. So like in some ways they're like timeless because they've like lasted. And um I have a bit about how people think I look like I'm from the 1950s. And so I talk about that. So I was like, oh great, there's like a timelessness to how I look. There's a timelessness to this joke. I kind of like that it's like a little bit too vague, really.
Yeah.
Um, but as I'm often told, like that doesn't sell well.
I mean, most people's tour names are just random. They're so
Yes,
random.
yes,
Like John Malay's just called Baby J, and I was like, I didn't get it until I'm like, oh wait, I guess it makes sense, but also like, I don't get it in a way.
yeah. I mean, it's normally just like a reference to one joke in your set, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even do that with this one, but big ups to my PR person for helping me. I couldn't even. I came up with like 150 different titles, and she hated so many of them. And then she was like, "Emotional Man, that's good." And then she acted like she came up with it anyway.
Taking credit.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, in a previous interview you've been in, you've spoken
Mm,
about having like early memories of your family laughing at each other in the kitchen.
wow.
Do you try to create this environment during your act? Is like kind of like opening the family up to the crowd?
Yeah. Yep. I think that is what I do. It's a great question, but it's too well observed for me to have more to say than that. Yeah, I think that's what I do. I think it is. I'm trying to create that same sort of warmth
Yeah.
and connectivity. Um, but but I would say that one of the pieces of feedback that I've gotten from friends and people who've seen my show is that it actually maybe feels less like sitting around the kitchen talking, though I'm sure that's in there, but more like reading a book, like reading a good book is
Mm-hmm.
how the show has been described. That can mean a lot to a lot of people, but I do think whatever warmth I feel in the kitchen with my family, I think that's also, there can be warmth and the comfort in a book
Yeah.
that you go, I want to know more. And also there's something special and intimate.
Yeah.
So, and that's true in the family thing too. And I think in this show, I think that does come across.
I mean, definitely like there's always like that that's saying is like, oh, I just want to go down and be cozy and like we read a good book.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I there definitely is some intimacy between like an inanimate object and you, I guess.
Yeah, and like with the book, it's like you're engaging with like someone's like mind kind of like
Yeah.
it is very it's like what this person is trying to like write down to create in your brain is either working or not working or like it's there is a one-on-one intimacy with it. Um yeah, I don't think my show's like that one-on-one, but it's really nice when people feel connected to the material
I
in that
heard you
way.
say wow when I was asking the question. Did you not expect that?
I was really impressed with your level of preparedness. So that was what I was saying.
Thank
I
you.
was like in a previous interview, I'm like, yeah. I mean, there aren't that many, so that's good job.
Thank you.
Been on a lot of podcasts we're far less prepared. Have
Yeah.
you did you read or have you read Sick in the Head? That Judd Apatow like collection of interviews?
I have not.
So Judd Apatow, right? You
Yeah.
know Judd.
Yes.
So when he was in high school, I think he also like did
Interviewed
interviews
people.
with
Yeah.
comedians. Yeah. And he did one with like Jerry Seinfeld. I mean, like he like pretended to be, yeah. And so he like goes through the transcripts and like puts some of them in his book. And then he did a ton of interviews. And
Hmm.
and they did some as an adult too when he was like famous and could get more people.
Yeah.
But I was reminded of that when you asked me to do it. When I was just like, yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have done this if I was in high school. I wouldn't have known how there, and so, yeah,
I
I was wondering if you already knew about this lineage of aspiring comedians.
I mean, I actually didn't know about it until like recently because I was talking to my English teacher, my former English teacher, I
Yeah,
guess now. He's like, "Yeah, you should try to get Judd Apatow on your like
yeah,
podcast." I'm
you
like, "I
should.
wish."
No, I think it's a good angle. I think you should.
I'll try, but I don't know
Yeah,
how
you
much
should
he's gonna
try.
respond to me for that.
I don't know. People surprise you with what they'll say yes to, I
Yeah.
think.
I mean, I've come to realize there's like after like I've asked like so many people, um there's like a certain amount of like if you're famous enough, you're not going to respond.
Yes.
But it's possible that people who have like really good track records who are underrated will respond.
Uh, Yeah.
And I don't know if Judd Apatow is part of that.
Maybe he's past, but then it's like he's past the point. He's been famous for so long. Do you know what I mean? Like I think
Yeah.
there is also a part where you can just become nostalgic
Yeah, yeah.
for the purity of youthful engagement in comedy,
Mhm.
where it's like you like comedy, so you're asking comedians to talk about it. You're not you're not like 20 years into working in Hollywood and still trying to figure out how to like comedy, but you're always viewing it through the lens of like commerce and economics, which is like
Yeah.
so I think there would be like the pitch would be there's like a freshness to and a relief that he would get to like just talk about
Yeah,
comedy.
it's just for fun. Like there's nothing
Yeah.
I'm not trying to get anything out of it.
No. But I'm sure this is going to be a huge boost to my PR, so I really appreciate you having me
You're
on here.
welcome. You're welcome.
I have 6 shows at the Soho Playhouse, Huron Club in New York that I really need any listeners in the New York area, even just the East Coast. Yeah, please come.
Okay. Also in the same interview, this is another
Ooh,
question. You speak of your
yeah.
act as the song I'm Not Angry by Elvis Costello.
Oh my God. Why did I say that?
So, but in the lyrics, when I was looking at it, it repeats "I'm not angry anymore." So that indicates that you were angry to
Ah,
begin with. Does that signify that you were once angry before, and you
yeah.
realized and stopped yourself?
Great to be reminded of the wisdom of my past. Yeah, I think that, I mean, it is yeah, I mean, I was angry. I was really angry about a number of things, and I think a lot of it was getting directed at my father.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's a large part of it, of that, like, what do you do with your with big emotions?
Mm-hmm.
And then as like a straight man, what are your possible outlets? What are like the viable, acceptable outlets?
Mm-hmm.
And anger is just kind of the most acceptable one
Yeah.
for many. And so it was that. And I think like that was like the safe place to go, is to be angry rather than to just be sad. And yeah, not angry anymore, because it does end with like, yeah, it's a resolution. Yeah. Can you believe that?
I mean, you could also
Yeah.
just go to a bar and get drunk. That's also a way. That's a resolution.
But you don't know about that. You don't know about that. You should know about that. Yeah, you can, but that actually isn't. And here's the cool thing. That's not a resolution at all.
Really?
That never resolves anything. No, 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 no,
Well, I don't know about that.
no.
I'm not of age. I don't know. I've never
No, it
tried
doesn't
it.
resolve. It doesn't resolve anything. The only way it could resolve something is if you like met a friend and they like heard your pain and like helped you.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, if you went to a bar and that happened, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely relate to being angry.
Mm,
Because I've like, I think it's just that generation of fatherhood
mm-hmm,
is definitely very closed off in a way.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like my father, even though I'm like Gen Z,
Mm-hmm.
I my father is quite aged because I have a sister who's 17 years older than me.
Oh, okay.
So like she's probably around your
Yeah,
age. I don't know. Um,
right.
so he definitely is very closed off in certain emotions and things, and sometimes he would express them in like weird ways. I'm like, I don't get
Yes.
you, but
Yeah,
you know. So I'm trying to go through it myself, but I'm like also at the same time I'm like, I gotta get into college first, and then I'll deal with that.
totally. Yeah, it's also easier to deal with when like maybe there's a little distance between you and your family.
Yeah.
Living with your family and trying to contend with the patterns of behavior, the past, how everyone's changing. It's hard. Sometimes you just gotta live in a separate place, and then it's easier
I
to
can't wait to
have
live in a dorm.
perspective.
I can't wait.
It can be good depending on the dorm.
Depending on the dorm. Depending on the
Yeah.
dorm.
I think every place you talked about is pretty good though.
Yeah. So I've also, as I've done research about you, I've also
Yeah,
watched the rare clips that you posted online of your jokes.
thank you. Yeah, I'm very bad on social media, but there are a lot of clips.
So, after watching it, it's really obvious that you are very self aware of like who you are, and even through this conversation, I've realized like, oh, you really, like you're a straight white man and what
Mm-hmm,
you got to do for that. So,
hmm.
and do you think that having being in therapy since middle school has shaped the way that you try to view and create your jokes nowadays?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think like, so yeah, that is true. That is from a joke I did too. But I have been in yeah, I went to therapy for a couple of years in middle school, and for me, w- what I think, and that was for obsessive compulsive disorder, and so a lot of that work was like, hey, what are you feeling, and
Hmm.
what are you actually feeling that you think this action is um going to alleviate?
Hmm.
And so there was like a required self-awareness of like looking at my behavior and then looking at the like spark for that behavior,
Yeah.
and recognizing the link and then unlinking them. And I think having to do that at an age when so many of my peers were um, not having to reflect in that way. Like I
Yeah.
think having being forced to have a practice of doing that, I think raised my awareness for sure. Um, and I just, I had a really perceptive older sister, and I had a really high emotional intelligence mom, and my dad was very kind. And so I think that I had a lot of other things that helped me try to be aware.
Hmm.
But for sure, like a lot of great educators, and yeah, the forced practice of self-reflection at an age when you can be pretty self-absorbed, I think helpful.
Yeah. Do you definitely think that you became much more emotionally mature compared to the rest of your peers?
Yeah, my male peers, yeah. But I mean, we're just trying to, we're just, it's a slow journey.
It is.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I think so. Not, but there were many, you know, maturity, there's a lot of different like uh, facets of maturity. So
Hmm.
I think in some ways, yeah, in that kind of like mental health space, I
Yeah.
think I was more mature, but just because I kind of had to be in the same way where it's like friends of mine who's like lost their parents when they were younger,
Yeah.
like had a much keener understanding of grief than I like could. Um, and what that feels like and what's needed to support people through that, like that I lacked. So I think I just don't want to look at like emotional maturity as a like monolith or like
Hmm.
one idea. It's like a bunch of different areas.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, in some areas I think I had a bit of a head start. Yeah.
No, yeah, I definitely, I've been saying a lot, this a lot, but I definitely relate to that because even though
Mm,
I
good.
didn't have OCD,
Yeah.
a few years ago, I had depression. Well, I still have
Mm-hmm.
depression.
Yeah.
So that took, even though I didn't really use that much therapy per se,
Mm-hmm.
it allowed me to have lots of introspection on myself, and sometimes they were
Yeah.
wrong, and like because I was trying to
Right.
trick myself into thinking like
Yeah.
I'm this and that, but
Yes.
definitely after like just going like taking meds and doing whatever things I needed to do, I definitely have like centered out. I'm like, okay, some things were right, but some things were
Mm,
just ridiculously like, I don't know why I thought that.
mm, mm-hmm.
So I definitely think that I also like, even though I definitely do have a lot of things to mature.
Mm-hmm.
Mental health is definitely a place where I'm just like, okay, like I have a good handle on this. If you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Of course.
yeah, but I mean, I feel like definitely a lot of comedians deal with mental health
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's just like the industry is also very rough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it is. It is rough. And it's the yeah, I mean it's really beautiful when like older comics, kind of like get right. Like they kind of because it's an industry and like it's like any part of America really, but it's like they're trying to work you as much as you can. And but it's so personal in Hollywood. It's
Yeah.
like it's very clearly personal. Um and that can be really hard. And comedy is such a relief in so many ways for people and such a balm for um, past trauma or things you're going through. And then, like, you get good at that, and your defense mechanism of comedy is really good. And then you get into an industry that's like maybe abusive a lot of the time. It's just a terrible
Yeah.
cycle. Um, but yeah. And obviously, comics do best when they get the help they need for what they're going through.
Yeah.
They don't need to be unwell to make their art. It's like, nope, it's a lot better. Like if you're doing well.
Yeah.
Actually, Taylor Tomlinson talked about this on a Fresh Air like last week or something, talking about her bipolar 2
Mhm.
diagnosis and just like how, getting the right meds, getting the right therapy, like it not has helped her art and not the other way. And I know there's like a very common myth about needing to be damaged to make art, and it's like no, it's actually good if you can like get out of bed every day,
Yeah.
and you don't have to go on high highs and low lows. Yeah.
No, yeah, yeah. Like I definitely think I became funnier after I started healing, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to be fair, I didn't really talk at all before that, so there wasn't really a standard of how funny I could
Okay.
be. So,
Gotcha. Yeah, a lot of time to incubate the
yeah,
ideas and the words. That's good.
yeah. You also you speak many times of not being your dad's favorite out of two siblings. Uh, has your
Yeah.
comedy career helped that at all?
Um, I mean, yeah, I think so. I think just growing up and being like, um, yeah, I mean, it's this thing where with a joke, there's a kernel of truth, and then you like, you accentuate it. So it's like it's much funnier if I'm like very bothered by it. But I also think there is I actually do think that the way that he had behaved towards her is genuinely favorite. I think he actually is. Like he's just a little harder on me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it's a yeah, there are many reasons for it, but it has helped that that we've done a lot of work on our own relationship.
Yeah.
And my
Couples
career,
therapy.
yeah, I think the therapy has actually been more helpful than like my career.
No, I mean, I definitely, I feel like I actually can't relate to that though, because my sister and I are like, or basically two only childs, even though
Yeah,
we are
right,
siblings.
right.
And there's like, because we have no siblings in between us.
Yeah.
So it's really weird because I can't tell if they have a favorite or not. Because we're at such different levels, like such different stages. Like I'm here still
Totally.
trying to finish high school, and she's
Right.
here like like creating her old damn company or something. I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
what she's doing at this
Right.
point. She's
Right.
on so many
Right.
side quests in California that like I don't know.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you definitely changed a lot since you were younger because since you were raised in an Irish Catholic family and now you become atheist,
Uh, yeah.
that
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah. Yeah.
changed some of his perspectives on you.
You know what's funny though is like I don't. Yeah, I mean, I did. I was. I. It's like I was. Yeah, I was raised Irish Catholic. We like went to church, and then we like stopped going to church, which is like a very Catholic, honestly, a very Catholic thing to do. Just be like, yeah, we're not gonna go anymore. Yeah, we still believe in it, and like, yeah, when we die, it should be a Catholic thing. But like in the intervening years, we're just not gonna do that. Because church truly the Catholics. Okay, this is we make church so boring, and it's like, oh, there are other churches where like you go to church and there's a basketball court and there's like a band, and
Yeah.
it's like I go to church and it's just like this old virgin man just telling me I'm a bad person. It's just not. There's not a lot of incentive. But I think actually my whole family has sort of there's a strong. My godfather is an atheist, like truly.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really my fault. I ended up, being like, I'm not sure.
Pushing the blame, I
Um,
see.
I'm just saying, it's like you made my godfather. You chose him. My family chose him, and then it's like he is an atheist.
Yeah.
So for me, the person in charge of my relationship with God doesn't believe there is one. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I've changed that much actually in that because I kind of abandoned the church when I was like 13 or 14, and so it's been a
Wow.
long time.
Being rebellious since a young age.
Yeah, well, my mom was like, I'm not going to go to church anymore, so that was like pretty easy. It was just church was just something Dad did by himself Sunday morning.
Just to be away from the family.
Oh, he would have loved it if we went, but we didn't. So,
You know what's really funny? I was raised as an atheist because my parents were like, they're just trying to get your money. But then
right.
they for some reason sent me to like Christian camps.
Okay.
And so
Just to hedge their bets.
I was confused because I moved around a little, so I was in Alabama for like 4 or 5 years, and they're huge
Okay.
on religion. So
Yeah.
when I was going to a summer camp, I don't know if they realized or not, but they were sending me to a literal church for summer camp.
Yeah. Well, because where else are you going to? I mean, truly, in Alabama, like that was probably like the nicest building
It was
to be
pretty
in.
nice, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie.
I mean, I opened for um, the guy that I worked with, Trey Kennedy. He had a private gig, and we were in like outside of Cincinnati,
Hmm.
and it was a corporate gig, but we were at the mega church because the mega church in that community had like the best stage and sound system,
Yeah.
just like around. It was like professional theater, and that was the nicest one outside, like in the suburb. So in Alabama, for sure, I'm sure that church building was real nice, and like that's a good place for a summer camp.
It was a really good place. It was so nice and spacious, but I was like almost transitioned into this
Mm,
religion.
hmm
Like I started praying and like stuff, and I'm like, and I realized later, like
mm.
years later, I'm like, was I almost converted because of this? I'm like,
Yeah, maybe.
that's a really good ad for them, I guess, just to have fun and also being converted. But like, I was just like, hold up, it's weird to look back now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. I mean, yeah. Do you think religion plays a large part in your comedy? Would you say?
No, I don't think it does. In comparison to like some other people, no. What do you think the role might be?
I mean, some people definitely try to talk about religion, which I think is very brave of them.
Or
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's like culturally, like the reason that I tend to mention like Irish Catholic stuff on stage is because there's a it's a shorthand to a type of culture
Hmm.
that is like relevant for people to know, I think. Um, even if like so in that way, it informs me because like of the way in which comedy is often used with like Irish Catholic communities and the type of like
Yeah.
whatever. But but like actual biblical stuff or like faith is not a huge part of really my worldview. And so
Yeah.
in that way, like my stand-up worldview.
I mean, Taylor Tomlinson used to perform at like churches when she was younger.
Yeah,
So, I
yeah.
mean, that's a way to earn some money if you're ever looking for it.
Oh, definitely. And um it's a good way to earn a lot of money. Like clean comedy for sure, like is just really important, especially in like more conservative Christian communities. There's a high value in it. Um, that's Trey started, and he has like a pretty strong like Christian following, just because he was from Oklahoma and he does clean comedy, and so that's the tour I've been on. So like I've been performing in front of these people quite a bit,
Yeah.
um, which was a fun opportunity for me because I'm like, have they ever seen my clip about being an atheist or whatever? Like these people are gonna watch me at the show and then go find out I'm like, I think this is dumb what you believe. But but it's amazing the value of clean comedy, and that's like kind of I didn't intentionally do this, but I did decide not to swear or talk about like sex and stuff on
Hmm.
stage because I thought it would make me have to be funnier because I couldn't rely on stuff that was like a little like inherently taboo or whatever, which
Hmm.
like gets people kind of excited. I wanted to make sure that like it was funny
You would have made sure that you
on its
earned
merit.
it.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, yeah.
Just, yeah.
Which you could argue has some weird Irish Catholic roots to that need.
I mean, like, it definitely is weird because I feel like some comedians definitely try to use these, like, controversial topics. Like,
Hmm
Ricky Gervais, Jimmy Carr, they're definitely
Sure.
so
Yeah.
controversial in, like, the things they dabble with, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's definitely, I feel like it definitely depends on how comedians view the way comedy should be seen, because I feel
Mm,
like some people are definitely like, oh, it should be like a comfortable place where you're supposed to just laugh at like funny things, but other
yeah.
people are like, this is a place where we can laugh at things that we should not be laughing at usually,
Mm,
like
hmm
uncomfortable topics, and then people who
Yeah.
like, they want people to get like on the edge of their seats
Yeah.
while watching it. So it definitely, I think it just, depending on the way you view how your comedy like should be laughed at, it depends.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. I think too with some of the people that you've named, like Gervais and Carr, they're also like so famous that when they have to find material, they kind of can't pull from their like day-to-day life.
Yeah.
So they kind of have to talk about bigger cultural things. Um, and I think if you're going to do that and not really do your due diligence on educating yourself on it and like actually having like a nuanced view that like is
Mm-hmm.
relevant and funny
Yeah.
and doesn't punch down, you're gonna just like end up being kind of like an edgelord comedy kind of thing where you're like trying to get people like on the edge of their seat and like offended.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because so much comedy early is just like, this is what my life's like. And like you're of the people, and then you
Yeah.
become like very, very famous, and then it's like you aren't anymore. And for most comics, because they're too famous. But there are some who still like ride that line and they're still really relatable. But I think for Gervais and them, it's like, yeah, they're gonna pick like a hot button topic so that they have material and then it feels relevant, that
Mm-hmm.
they feel relevant,
Yeah.
even if their point of view actually, like a, late 50s British wealthy man is like, that's not a view that I think a lot of people are craving, right?
Yeah.
So he has to figure out a way to be relevant.
When you become famous, are you gonna become
Mm,
that old rich man?
no, no. I think once I make enough money, no one will ever hear from me again. Um, no, I'll just try to like support people from behind the scenes. That's kind of like my whole hope is just to like build up enough platforms that you can like help other people.
Yeah.
It's kind of it. It's like, work on some projects, help build some projects, Judd Apatow it a little bit, and then, find a farm and retire.
Do you enjoy like the writing process more, or do you enjoy
Yeah.
experimenting with live comedy? Because I know you've before you've done most of like live comedy, you were a writer for like
Yeah.
the animated NBA show.
Yeah.
So
Short-lived. Um, yeah, I think I love writing. I mean, I really do. I love writing with other people and like trying to make something. I think
mhm.
that's like really, really exciting. Live performance is its own thrill.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's more about like, what's the like thing, what can I kind of endure best? I think that's like and I think I can like tolerate the difficulty of writing pretty well. And that's like why I think there's like value there for me.
Mhm.
But yeah, I love writing a joke. I love trying to figure it out. But they're so married, live performance and writing with stand up, that I think I'm probably not able to say which I like more. I think like I need them both.
Mhm. I mean, I feel like yeah. I mean, I've seen both worlds because I've interviewed um Brian Kiley. I don't know if you know him.
No.
He was the head monologue writer for Conan for like
Oh, great.
20 something years.
Yeah.
Yeah, now he does like stand up and stuff. So it definitely there's people who like it's very interesting to see people who like go from stand up to writers.
Yeah.
And then but there's also writers who enjoy like the stand up, like the live comedy part. So it's like it's
Yeah.
interesting to see whether like people view them as a combined kind of topic or more of a separated like two
Yeah.
different activities that you kill two birds with one stone sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes there's just like I think a little bit is just like what will people pay you to do a little bit, and people will pay you to write earlier than pay you to perform, because you kind of have to build a following to
Yeah.
have people pay you to perform. Um, but there's a little bit too, like every writer I know, like for the most part, likes performance. But sometimes there is something that happens where if someone gets on stage, the audience will be like, I like them. I'm going to listen. And obviously, some of that has to do with our cultural biases, which we've already discussed. But some of it is just like, really just like, I don't know. They're fun. There's like something fun about listening to this person. And sometimes you just don't quite have that thing, but you're very funny.
Hmm.
And so writing can be like a really, so then and then sometimes they're just writers and you go, oh yeah, because they're so funny.
Yeah.
But if they got up there and tried to like charm, there's like an element of charm in stand up, I think, that just maybe doesn't come across like their performance stand up. their performance persona is less charming than their writing charm.
Yeah.
And so that's where they end up. There's a lot of really funny comics who are also writers, for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
No, yeah, it's definitely interesting because like a lot of writers who are like getting paid for things, they definitely have to write in a way not their own voice because they're writing for
Right,
someone else to perform it, not themselves.
right, right.
So yeah, it's interesting because like for stand up, when you write your jokes, you're thinking of like, oh, how would I say this instead of how would
Hmm.
someone else say that, you know?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, uh, since you're doing so much live comedy, do you think it's ruined your sleep schedule? Is it because so many performances are so late?
Yeah, I think it's like the probably one of my bigger challenges in comedy is that I'm like a morning person and
Yeah.
I've picked a profession that is not that. Um, so yeah, it either it affects my sleep schedule
Yeah.
or I'm not performing as much as I should because I'm valuing sleep. That's again why writing seems like a great path. Because everyone's like, well, if you wake up at 6, you could just start working. You don't have to
Exactly.
like wait till everyone gets 2 drinks and is at a venue at 8 or whatever.
I
But
mean,
you
I feel
but
like it depends because like
yeah,
if you're writing for like a late night show and they're performing live at like freaking
right.
11 p.m., then you gotta be up at 11 p.m. So
Well, but those shows tape at like 4:30
true,
or 5.
true.
So, I mean, you're working a pretty normal like 9 to 5. If you like, well, or like 8 to 8. Working on those shows, depending on the shows. Some
Yeah,
shows have better work-life balance than others.
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know how people who are writing for one of those shows are also like at the cellar doing a like 12:30 spot and then waking up and like writing and pitching on like a high intensity show like that. I think the stress more than anything is probably what messes with people's sleep schedule in comedy.
Yeah. Does it get to them that much, you think?
Well, it's high cortisol. It's just like even if you're loving it, even if you're doing well, it's still a lot of pressure to like have great ideas now.
Mm-hmm.
Like have them right now, say them, have them work. Now make them executable and get it done in time for recording. That's just like there's no way that's not stressful.
That's true.
Even if you're really, really good. And walking on stage, you can love performing and still I think your body knows that it's kind of in fight or flight
Mm-hmm.
mode to be up there in front of people. And so when I say stress, I just mean like kind of just background stress on the body, even if it's not like at the forefront of your mind of like, wow, I'm stressed out about this thing.
I mean, it's definitely because like subconsciously you're thinking I'm like, oh, I'm being so vulnerable in front of like such a
Hmm.
big crowd. Like I'm the
Yeah.
center of like of attention, and I'm like spilling all my problems out. Yeah.
Yes. Plus the like fact that we all carry around these little like phones that anyone can reach us at any time, and it's like that's stressful too.
I mean,
The
you've
amount of
said
like
that you think phones make
conversations.
people sad, so.
I do. I stand by that. It makes me sad. I guess it's really what I should say. It makes me sad because I did say that. I just said that to I think they were a sophomore in high school. I've been I teach I coach improv at a
Mhm.
high school in New York, and I was like, phones make us sad. They were like, my phone makes me happy, and I had to really be like, yeah, okay, maybe. Like I can't judge that for you. I don't think so. But yeah, I get it. I do understand.
Yeah. So knowing that you're not on your phone much, you're probably reading a lot. You've you've mentioned that in a previous interview again that,
Yeah.
that your favorite person, not including friends and family,
Oh yeah.
was George Saunders or Sanders. I don't know how to
Yeah.
pronounce his name.
Yeah, Saunders. Yeah.
Saunders. Okay. As a person who has not read his books, but I do read a lot of books. I'm not saying I don't read books. A person who
Okay.
hasn't read his books, what do you think are suggestions to me starting out on him?
Okay. Well, look, here's what I would say. I don't even think that his like fiction is for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's funny, it's weird. His
Yeah.
short stories, like some of them are beautiful and heartbreaking and funny. And
Hmm.
so I think there is value there. The 10th of December, I think, is kind of his like best short story collection on some level. Um, but he also wrote Lincoln in the Bardo, and that's like a fun novel that also captures his voice. But anyway, the thing that I actually really appreciate about him and why I mentioned him in that interview was like he brings humility and humanity to talking about how to write.
Hmm.
And he's like very much an educator. And so he just makes writing feel doable for people. And I think that's so generous. And I think it's something that, in particular, like literary people, like they try to make it seem like either you have it or you don't, or you can't, like there's no way to even like talk about it. And he's just like, here's what I do. I work on it every day and I try to make it a little bit better every day. And eventually it is good. And he has a lot of good metaphors for like how to approach writing. And so, anyway, someone who takes their art that they have reverence for and then tries to translate it and share it with other people who are also interested in that art, I think is highly valuable for an artist to do, and especially an artist of his level of influence.
No, yeah, I definitely, because it's, I feel like a lot of things in art forms, it's very foreign in a way to people
Hmm.
trying to start out. And definitely like school and education has made it much more accessible, such as like let's just say performing arts with like the
Yeah.
band or like visual arts with like painting, but a lot of more things such as like writing, like performing some like some niche performance method, like improv.
Hmm.
It's not as common as others. And I definitely think that people who expose their process and show that like you you not only like you don't have to have that much talent to be good.
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
And you don't have to hoard. It's not like a zero-sum game.
yeah.
And I think that for me is something I really appreciate. That like the openness that you said, of the openness of like sharing what you've learned. Um, because we're really, if we're even significant at all in whatever field, it's for a short time relative to the duration of that art and that field. And so it benefits us to try to be a part of that lineage of artists or comedians. And that includes like trying to help others
Hmm.
and share. Um, but I think we can, especially with stand-ups, you can feel very much like it's each person for themselves. And so I appreciate what George is doing with like, it's not everyone for themselves. Like, I'll tell you how I do this and trust that when I, George, do it my way, my unique charm will come through. And that's what will sell and keep selling for me. But that doesn't mean that other people can't have these tools and they
Hmm.
can't also use them to bring out their particular charm. Um, and that doesn't take anything away from him. In fact, it like helps.
Yeah. It definitely I feel like writing is such a it's such a I don't know, it's such I have a lot of history with writing. And like
Mm,
in a way it's hard to explain, but like ever since I was young, even though I'm still I guess young, but
mhm.
in elementary school I've always like been told that my writing sucks.
Really?
Yeah, like my parents are just like, you need to improve on your writing, man. Like this is not
Mm,
like your math and science is fine, but your writing is like not it.
mm,
So, and it was really funny because I was a avid reader for everything, so I would
yeah,
love
yeah.
reading things, but I just suck at writing. And I feel like I definitely it's been like an insecurity of mine since for like many years, and I finally like
Mm,
got over it a little like sophomore year, and then every time like an English teacher is like, okay, so that's not really right or that's not really it. I'm like, oh wait, I guess I am still bad at writing, but it's just like it's
mm.
still it's definitely hard, I feel like, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, writing is just like revision. And I think like until you kind of like really have that in you
Yeah.
of like knowing that, it's always going to feel like a judgment on like every time you do something, you'd be like, so am I a good writer or not? And you can't put that kind of pressure on any draft of anything.
Yeah.
You're a writer if you write. You're a writer if you continue to do the thing,
Mm-hmm.
if you like revise. Though I will say, I also, as a kid, my mom, I was insistent that I was a writer, and my mom, who was a very good writer, was sort of like, no, I don't think so. I said, I was like, I am a writer. I like have things to say. I just like don't always get them onto the page.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, that's writing. Um, but I like just didn't, it was because I felt like I was observing the world as a writer. I was like thinking about things in that
Mm-hmm.
way, but I hadn't figured out how to um truly like how to get it onto the page and then work with it on the page like you have to.
Yeah.
Like I didn't understand how to revise.
No, yeah, I definitely, I used to, now I've changed, but I used to just always just like, I cannot do more than one draft. So like my one draft is
Right.
one and done.
Yep.
That's it.
Right. Same.
Yeah.
And once you realize that's actually not it at all, and that like doing that doesn't like keep me psychologically safe.
Yeah, and I'm just like, later on, I just like, I can't look back at those because I'm just like, those are going to be so horrible.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I need to make sure that like nowadays, I'm like always like multiple drafts, like
Yep.
perfectioning, no, perfecting it. No,
Yeah.
I don't know. You get what I'm
Oh, that's
saying.
right.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it just sounded wrong. But like honing it to be the best it could be
Yeah.
by drafts, even though it's like kind of a pain to be like, oh wait, what was I thinking when I wrote that like a few
Right.
days ago?
Yeah. Yeah, you have to contend with your past self that thought this was the best.
Yeah,
And then you have to be like, it isn't.
so it's actually
And you
not.
kind of have to tolerate that. Yeah.
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 I mean, I feel like that definitely relates to like stand up because
Yeah.
you always have to be like, oh wait, so that wasn't a good joke. Oh wait, like they laughed at that one for some reason.
Yep.
Yeah,
Stand up always humbles.
it does.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It always does.
So okay, so these are our last few questions. So knowing that you were in Chicago for a while and knowing that you're now in New York,
Yeah.
where should I go in Chicago and New York, knowing that I have a deep interest in comedy scenes?
Well, I mean, I think that if you can do, I think improv is probably going to be like your easiest way into performing while underaged. Because I think they'll have like teenage classes and they'll have
Yeah.
like high school classes. So like, while going through can sometimes feel like they're just going through the whole curriculum can sometimes feel like these places are taking your money. I think to get chances to be learning from professional comedians is like really valuable, and you can get that like the Annoyance or IO. I mean, I kind of lean towards the Annoyance personally, but um, yeah, I don't know where you would go to watch shows in Chicago that wouldn't like ID you. Anyway, I would say improv probably, and yeah, that's
I
what I'd
mean,
say.
I
And
am
in New York,
turning
there's a bunch of
18 soon.
UCB. That's great, but there's still going to be places that like
21.
are 21 and older. So yeah, go to the places that let you in, and that's what I'd say. Go to the places that let you in. And then in New York, there's UCB, and I mean they just reopened their theater, and that's a great place to like see work and see improvisers. And the thing that's great about improv is like that's writing. Improvising is writing.
Mm-hmm.
Writing is improvising. So, um, yeah, that's what I would recommend.
All right.
And go just like seeing it in person
Yeah.
as much as you can.
Yeah.
Because you're right that it is different than when you like just see a special, or you like see on a screen.
No, yeah. I definitely need to go to more shows.
Yeah.
Not that I'm probably not old enough to go to most of them, but I definitely want to go to more. Like I've only been to like one stand-up show. Now it's like John Mulaney like a year ago.
Yeah.
And it was really awkward because I was like I went there alone. And I was like, I just wanted to watch him. Like, I didn't care if anyone else came with me. I just wanted to watch him. But I realized, I'm like, oh wait, maybe many people are coming in too. So maybe it would be better if I could laugh with somebody else.
It is good to have a comedy buddy. Yeah, for sure.
So I will be searching out for one. That's okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. That's good. That is important.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Last question.
Great.
What is some advice you would give to people who want to start out in this comedy industry or specifically want to do stand-up like you?
Yeah. Yeah, just start. Just like write stuff. You have a little notebook and write stuff down.
Don't get ID'd.
And then, yeah, get into places legally and perform. Yeah, I mean, really, it is just like whatever you're doing. Maria Bamford says this, where she's like, whatever you're doing, just like call it stand up. And I think that's great. And you should just write ideas down and test them out and just like start doing it, because there's no shortcut to getting better. But you can learn how you do it better by doing it. So yeah, I would just get started and find people who like care about it like you do.
Yeah. That's why I'm doing this podcast. I don't gotta expand bigger than the community I have.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for talking with me.
Of course. Yeah. This was lovely. Thanks for having me on.
You gotta post more clips so I can research you more.
Yeah. You got it. I do have to do that.
Be better on social media.
Thank you. Thank you. It's the first I've heard that critique. But it is correct. All right. Best of luck.
Thank you. Hey all. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And please have mercy on me because I don't know what I was on while recording this with him. But I was considering actually not posting this. However, I do respect Lucas so much, and I think that even though my personal speech flaws were soaring throughout this recording, the actual content of this discussion was very meaningful, and I hope to, even though most people might not listen to this, I think it's one of the better conversations. Yeah. Well, thank you for listening. I hope you have a great day. Have a good night, good morning, good evening, good lunch, good afternoon, whatever time it is. Thank you.